I walked into the kitchen and heard my mother-in-law say, "She's not real family. She's just a body in the house." My father-in-law replied, "She can cook and breathe. That's all she's worth." I dropped the dishes, looked them in the eye, and said, "I heard everything." That night, I made a single online transfer that took back every cent I'd ever given them. I married Marco when I was 24.
We met in gradschool.
He was quiet, kind, focused. We weren't the type of couple that drew attention. We just worked. We studied late together, packed each other lunches, split bills, fell asleep holding hands. He made me feel safe, and that was rare for me. I didn't grow up with safety.
So I held on to it.
When we got engaged, I was nervous to meet his family. He told me they were old school. That was his word. Said they didn't talk much, didn't hug, but they meant well. The first time I met his parents, Teresa and Felix, I wore a soft blue dress and brought a homemade lemon cake. Teresa looked at it and said, "We don't eat sugar," then cut herself a slice. Felix asked where my parents were from before asking what kind of job I planned to get with that degree. I laughed it off. I wanted to belong. When we got married a year later, they didn't come. Said it was too soon, that they didn't know me. Marco told me not to take it personally. I didn't fight him on it. I just sent them a framed photo from the wedding, even though they never asked for one. For the first 2 years, it was just Marco and me. We had a one-bedroom apartment and shared one car. He worked in engineering. I was in public health. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Then Marco got laid off when his company downsized. It was supposed to be temporary. A few months. It turned into a year. I picked up a second job. I worked a full day at the clinic, then did online transcription in the evenings. I remember falling asleep with my hands still on the keyboard some nights. Marco did try. He applied everywhere, went to interviews, even worked shifts at a warehouse. But he started getting quiet. He'd stay up late gaming, sleep until noon. Teresa would call and ask if he was okay. She never once asked if I was okay. When she needed surgery on her knee, we drove down to stay with them, so she wouldn't be alone. I made her meals, cleaned her sheets, helped her shower. She never said thank you. Once, when I brought her lunch, she looked at the tray and said, "Next time don't put the rice under the stew. It gets soggy." Then she ate all of it. I still thought maybe that was just her way. Maybe she didn't know how to be warm. Then Felix's truck broke down, and Marco offered to help with a down payment for another one. We didn't really have the extra cash, but I said yes. I always said yes. When their water heater busted, we helped again. When their cat needed surgery, we paid half. I convinced myself this was what family did. And I kept telling myself, if I do enough, they'll see me. Eventually Marco got offered a job back in his hometown. The pay was good, and Teresa offered for us to stay at their place, just for a little while we saved for our own. We packed up and moved in. I gave up the job I had. Told myself it was just a reset, a stepping stone. They had a guest suite in the back. It was small, but it had a kitchenette and a bathroom. I told myself we could make it work. That first week, I cooked every night, big meals, ones I grew up with. Felix picked at his plate, then said, "You sure do use a lot of garlic." Teresa didn't say anything at all. Soon they stopped doing anything around the house. They wouldn't lift a finger. Dishes piled up. Laundry overflowed. They acted like I was invisible until something wasn't done. Then Teresa would leave sticky notes. "Can you scrub the stove next time? We're out of milk again." The sink smells. Marco would get home late and just nod along. "She's not used to help," he'd say. "Don't take it the wrong way." One night, I had to work late, so Teresa cooked. When I walked in, she looked me up and down and said, "Don't worry, I didn't need you today." I tried to laugh. Said, "You could have texted me." She just turned away. I stopped offering to do extra things. I kept to myself. Marco noticed, but he didn't know what to say. I don't think he ever knew how to stand up to them. And I was tired of begging for softness. But I still didn't see it coming. Not like that. That day, I came home early from work. I'd had a migraine since the morning and just needed to lie down. The house was quiet. I walked in through the back door and headed to the kitchen to grab a glass of water. That's when I heard them. Teresa's voice was sharp and dry. She's not real family. She's just a body in the house. Then Felix, laughing a little, said, "She can cook and breathe. That's all she's worth." Something inside me cracked. I was holding a glass baking dish I'd picked up from the store. It slipped, shattered on the floor. They came rushing in, startled. Teresa said, "What happened?" Her face was twisted up like I had ruined something. I just looked at both of them and said, "I heard everything." Neither of them apologized. Felix rolled his eyes. Teresa crossed her arms. I stepped around the glass, went to the back room, and shut the door. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. I didn't cry.
I didn't yell.
I just stared at nothing. Then I opened my laptop. I logged into our joint account, Marco, and I had always used it for shared expenses. All the payments to Teresa and Felix had come from it. I pulled up every statement from the last 4 years, added up everything I had contributed. The surgeries, the truck, the groceries, the bills, the cleaning supplies, the furniture we helped replace. I even added what I spent on food when I hosted holidays, Easter, Thanksgiving, birthdays they didn't even say thank you for. Then I transferred all of it into a separate account, one with only my name on it. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about stopping the bleeding. About finally saying, in my own way, you don't get to use me anymore. That night, I told Marco I wanted to leave.
He didn't ask why. We started packing the next day.
Quietly. No drama. No shouting. But inside, something had changed in me. Something sharp and final. I had given everything I had, my money, my time, my energy, my pride, and I was still seen as worthless. That's when I realized I wasn't part of their family. I was their unpaid help. And I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. This was just the beginning. Marco and I moved into a small apartment across town. It was nothing special. 1 bedroom, no washer and dryer, paper-thin walls. But it was quiet. And no one left notes on the fridge. At first, Marco acted like everything was fine. Like we'd hit a small bump, and now we were moving forward. He never asked what I'd heard that day in the kitchen. I think he knew. I think part of him didn't want to face it. His silence said everything. I didn't push it, but I started noticing things. Marco still drove over to see them almost every day. Said he was helping with yard work or checking in. He'd leave after work and stay for hours. I asked him once, "Why are you still going over there?" He shrugged and said, "They're my parents."
No epalegi. No explanation.
Just that. Then I noticed they hadn't spoken to me at all. No calls.
No texts.
Not even a fake "hope you're doing well." Nothing. Just erased me. I shouldn't have cared, but it hit something in me. After everything I did for them, they were fine pretending I never existed. Then the rumors started. A friend from Marco's job pulled me aside at a work event. She was nervous, said she didn't want to cause drama, but thought I should know. Teresa had been telling people I was manipulative and controlling. That I made Marco leave the house. That I cut them off financially and turned him against his own blood. I went cold. They were turning it around, painting me as the problem. As if I hadn't cooked for them, cleaned their toilet, driven them to appointments, paid their bills. As if I hadn't broken myself trying to be accepted. I confronted Marco. He just looked tired and said, "You know how my mom is." That sentence made something in me snap. Because yes, I did know how she was. And now I knew how he was too. Passive. Avoidant. Letting me carry everything, including the blame. After that, things got worse between us. He started sleeping in the living room some nights. Said he was just tired. We stopped eating dinner together. He came home later and later. Still saw them constantly. One day, he didn't come home at all. I waited until midnight. Called him. No answer. At 2 a.m., he texted. Fell asleep at my parents'. Phone died. I stared at the screen for a long time. The next morning, I went to their house. I didn't tell Marco. I knocked on the door like I hadn't been there in months. Teresa opened it. Her face didn't even flinch. I asked, "Is Marco here?" She said, "He's resting." Like it was her house, her son, her marriage. I walked in without waiting. Marco was sitting on the couch, eating toast. He looked like a kid who got caught skipping school. I stood there and asked, "Are you staying here now?" He didn't answer. Teresa said, "He's free to be where he's loved." That's when I left.
I didn't yell.
I didn't cry.
I just walked out.
2 days later, Marco texted that he needed space. Said maybe we were too different. That it was hard for him to be in the middle. Like this was a debate and not my life unraveling.
He moved out the next week.
Back into their house. I was stunned.
Numb.
But deep down not surprised. And then came the final twist. I got a letter from a lawyer. Teresa and Felix were seeking repayment for shared household expenses from the year Marco and I lived in their house. They had itemized a list, groceries, utilities, even a monthly estimate for wear and tear. It was petty, but it was real.
They were suing me.
Suing me for the time I made their meals.
For the bills I helped pay.
For living in the back room, I cleaned myself. I took the letter, sat on the floor of my apartment, and didn't move for hours. They weren't just cruel. They were calculated. They wanted to make sure I was left with nothing, but they didn't know what I had. They didn't know I kept every receipt, every transfer, every screenshot of the payments I made from our joint account, the one with timestamps, descriptions, dates. They didn't know I had saved emails from Teresa asking for help with bills, that I had spreadsheets logging every single contribution. They didn't know I'd talked to a lawyer first. They were coming for me. But I wasn't the same woman they'd chewed up and dismissed. Not anymore. And I still had one more move to make. I didn't respond to the letter right away. My lawyer told me to stay calm, gather everything, and let him handle it. He said the case was weak, laughable even, but that didn't stop it from hurting. I wasn't sleeping much. I was losing weight. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I felt like I was being erased, like they were trying to rewrite who I was. One night, I got a message from Marco's cousin, Liza. We barely knew each other, but she had always been kind in passing. She asked if we could talk. I said yes. She picked a quiet cafe, sat across from me, and looked nervous. Then she told me everything. Teresa had been telling the whole family that I was mentally unstable, that I was obsessive and manipulative, that Marco had escaped, that I threatened them, tried to steal the family's money, and ran off when I didn't get my way. Liza didn't believe it. She said it didn't match what she remembered of me, said it felt too rehearsed, too coordinated. But it wasn't just gossip anymore. They were poisoning every relationship they could find, extended family, friends, even people at Marco's work. That's when Liza handed me something I didn't expect. She gave me a flash drive. "I probably shouldn't have this," she said, "but Teresa's careless." I copied it off her desktop before she could delete it. On that flash drive was a folder full of documents. Emails. Screenshots. Notes Teresa had typed out, scripts she used to talk about me to others. Fake versions of events. Backdated notes. Things that could have been used as evidence in court. She was building a story.
Piece by piece.
To destroy me. I sat in the cafe and shook. My hands wouldn't stop moving. Liza looked scared. She asked if I was okay. I wasn't, but I thanked her. I held the drive like it was a piece of my sanity. A few days later, my lawyer called. "Do you know a Victor Sandoval?" he asked. The name hit like ice. Victor was Marco's old coworker. Quiet guy. Kept to himself. But once, years ago, Marco had confided in me that Victor used to have a crush on Teresa. They all used to work at the same company, Felix, Teresa, and Victor, before Felix retired. Apparently, Victor had contacted my lawyer. He said he needed to come clean. He had emails from Teresa asking him to lie in court. She'd offered him money under the table to say he'd seen me threaten Felix during an argument. He didn't take the money, but he saved the messages. He sent the full email chain. Attached was a voice recording of Teresa talking to someone, probably Felix, in the background, planning what to say, how to make it sound believable. I listened to it 5 times. Each word burned. They were trying to bury me. I felt sick, violated, but also something else, clear. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was a setup. And I wasn't dealing with rude in-laws. I was dealing with people who wanted to destroy my name, my career, my life. And for what? Because I left? Because I said no? Because I finally saw what they really were? But there was still more. Something even worse. A few days later, I checked the joint account Marco and I had once shared. It had been empty for months. Closed, I thought. But someone had reopened it using Marco's login. And they'd added my name back, without my knowledge. Then they moved money through it. Large amounts. In and out. Transfers to and from unfamiliar names. I took screenshots. Called the bank. I had to sit on hold for 2 hours before someone finally confirmed. The account had been accessed using Marco's credentials. The address listed on the account? His parents' house. They were laundering money under my name, trying to make it look like I was involved. My lawyer's tone changed after that. He got serious. This isn't about the petty lawsuit anymore, he said. We're dealing with potential fraud and identity misuse. Everything was spiraling, but not out of control. Because this time, I wasn't helpless. I had proof. I had people who believed me, Liza, Victor, my lawyer. And now I had a legal case that was growing bigger by the day. I was still scared, still hurt, but I wasn't small anymore. And they had no idea what was coming. After the account tampering, everything moved faster. My lawyer filed 2 separate legal complaints, one for civil fraud and one for identity misuse. We sent a cease and desist to Teresa and Felix for the slander. He also filed a motion to dismiss their case against me, attaching all the evidence: Victor's emails, the voice recordings, the flash drive from Liza, the bank documents. The judge dismissed their case in under 3 minutes. But we didn't stop there. My lawyer pushed forward with a countersuit. He said we had more than enough for defamation, malicious prosecution, and fraud. He was right. The day we filed, Marco tried to call me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail saying, "We don't have to do this. You're better than this." That was the last message I ever listened to from him. Then the court ordered a financial audit of the reopened joint account. Turns out, Teresa and Felix were running money through it from a consulting business that didn't actually exist. They were writing fake invoices and moving money between their families' names. It looked like tax fraud. Maybe worse. Marco was listed as co-owner on every fake document. They tried to say it was all my idea, that I had reopened the account, that they were just helping. But they forgot something. When they re-added me to the account, they used an old email address I'd deleted years ago. I had written to the bank months before asking for that email to be removed from all communications. The bank had it on record. That's what saved me. Marco broke first. Under pressure, he signed an affidavit saying he knew what they were doing but didn't understand it fully. He admitted that Teresa had asked him to stay quiet, that she'd promised to handle everything. He said he felt stuck. He tried to leave them out of it, but the documents had both Felix and Teresa's names on them. There was no way around it. It went public. Not in a viral kind of way, but it made the local paper. Retired couple and son under investigation for financial misuse. It spread quietly. People talked. At the grocery store. At church. In their neighborhood. They lost everything. Felix's truck was repossessed. Teresa's bank accounts were frozen. They had to sell the house to pay legal fees. Marco moved out and got a studio apartment on the edge of town. He sent me one last email before the final hearing. I didn't know it would get this far. I thought you loved me. I never replied. The judge ruled in my favor. I won the countersuit. I didn't even ask for the full amount my lawyer recommended, just enough to pay back what I'd spent over the years, with damages. A clean number. $128,000. It was more than they ever thought I was worth. They tried to appeal. They lost again. They now live in a rental home in the outskirts. From what I heard through Liza, Teresa spends most days alone. Her friends stopped coming around. Felix barely leaves the house. Marco lost his job after the investigation. Apparently, he works delivery now. But none of that was my goal. The Real win was quiet. It was the day I moved into my own place. A 2-bedroom, filled with sunlight and clean floors. The first night, I sat on the couch with tea and silence. No one yelled. No one ignored me. No one asked for anything. It was the day my new job called to offer me a promotion, based partly on how I handled everything. It was when I stopped shrinking myself to be accepted. That was the revenge. I lived. I rebuilt. I thrived. A few months later, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was Marco's. It said, "I see it now. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I didn't think they could go that far. I didn't think I'd lose you too. But I did. And I deserve to." I read it once. Then I burned it. Because I wasn't angry anymore. Not like before. I just didn't care. I found my peace. And they were left with the only people they truly ever had. Each other. That was their real punishment. Not prison. Not poverty. Each other. That's all they ever wanted anyway.